Hi there, I'm Lynn Ames, and I want to read to you from my brand new novel, 46. It's the story of Emma McMasters. Emma McMasters is the 46th President of the United States. And I want to pick up the story in Chapter 2. This is Inauguration morning, and Emma, who has stayed at Blair House overnight, the house where the incoming president usually stays before the inauguration, and so she is reflective on this inauguration morning. So she's talking in this scene to her chief of staff at first, Nichelle Johnson, a woman who has been with her since Emma was a wet behind the ears state senator in New York. Not for the first time, Emma wished the occasion called for more practical footwear. She smiled ironically as she recalled Ann Richards' famous quote about Ginger Rogers doing everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards and in high heels. No doubt the deceased governor of Texas would have said the same of a female president. Emma stamped her feet to restore feeling and shivered inside her winter coat. Why couldn't this inauguration day have emulated Ronald Reagan's first inauguration, when the temperature in Washington, D.C. had reached a balmy 55 degrees? She exhaled and watched as her frozen breaths rose skyward. At least the sun was shining, and the wind had died down a bit after last night's light dusting of snow. She stood by herself in the private enclosed Ross Garden, the rear of the president's guest house, Blair House, across the street from the White House. In another few hours, she would walk through those iconic doors as President of the United States of America. "We made it, Heather." God, she wished her wife were here to give the speech one last bit of polish. Heather was so good at that. Emma bowed her head as the all too familiar stab of pain pierced her heart. They were supposed to be doing this together. Heather should have been holding the McMasters family Bible as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court administered the oath of office. In Heather's stead, Emma had invited her mentor, her mother's best friend, and the woman with whom she'd grown up emulating, to do the honors. Nichelle materialized next to her. "Madam President-elect, it's time to go to St. John's for the morning service." "You have got to stop sneaking up on me. I thought it was part of my job description to be discreet. Is that in the Presidential Chief of Staff Handbook? It worked for Martin Sheen in The American President, not to mention John Spencer on The West Wing. You're shaping your role based on fictional characters you admire?" Nichelle shrugged. "Works for me." "Well, I'll tell you this much. I'm not Michael Douglas. You're not Martin Sheen. We're not playing billiards, and you're not going to tell me off in colorful language if you think my head is up my wazoo." "Aw, I was looking forward to that." Emma linked arms with Nichelle as they strolled. "Promise me you'll never let me take myself too seriously." "I promise." Emma pulled them up short. "And that you'll always tell me the truth, even if I don't want to hear it." "You got it." "And that you'll keep the crazies away from me." "Don't push it. Some of those crazies are your constituents." "All of those crazies, at least the American ones, are my constituents, and some of them are elected officials." "Too true." Nichelle urged them forward again. "Are you really going to stand in the freezing cold without a coat to deliver the inaugural address?" "I am. It sends a strong signal." "Yeah, it tells people that president doesn't have an ounce of common sense." "It worked for Kennedy, Reagan, and Clinton. You know 2 of those 3 got shot and the other one got impeached, right?" "Okay, maybe those weren't the best examples." Emma said goodbye to Nichelle and joined her Secret Service entourage at the side of her limousine. "We're here, Madam President-elect." One of the Secret Service agents opened the door and Emma stepped out. She was greeted by the rector as she entered the Episcopal Church where almost every modern-day president-elect and vice president-elect attended service on inauguration morning. Emma took her place in the traditional presidential pew, pew 54, and settled in for the brief service. As much as she tried to take in the details, she couldn't keep her thoughts from straying to the precedent-breaking moment that would come next. For only the 4th time in the United States history, the incumbent president had chosen not to accompany the president-elect from the White House to the U.S. Capitol for the inauguration. As a student of history, this bothered Emma. Even Woodrow Wilson, who refused to attend his successor Warren G. Harding's inauguration in 1921, rode with the next president to the Capitol before departing. Beyond that, word of the snub was dominating headlines and news shows everywhere, and the hashtag pouting POTUS was trending on Twitter. While that was a modest improvement over the far right's preferred hashtag, Leslie Go Home, it still detracted from the dignity of the occasion and the traditional transition of power. Emma had received a letter yesterday on White House stationery, signed by the president, informing her of his decision. She consoled herself by admitting inwardly that, on a practical level, it would be nice not to have to deal with the awkwardness of the moment. She imagined the photographers snapping away as she and the outgoing president, who at every turn during the course of the campaign had defamed and debased her, exchanged a handshake and an insincere smile as he and his wife boarded Marine One for the last time. No, she wouldn't be sorry to miss that photo op. Then later in the day, the chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies informed her via telephone that the incumbent president had made it known that he and his wife would depart at exactly noon from the south lawn of the White House, the very moment Emma would be standing on the west terrace of the U.S. Capitol taking the oath of office. Even for this president, the blatant show of disrespect for tradition, for her, and the office of the presidency was astounding. "We're sorry, Madam President-elect, we never imagined—" "Of course not. Please, don't worry about it. It wasn't your decision to make." "Yes, but the plan calls for you to go from the service at St. John's directly to the White House, where you were to be met by the president at the North Portico and ride together to the Capitol for the oath and the inauguration ceremony. I'm familiar with the tradition. Under the circumstances, you'll be going directly from St. John's to the Capitol. I'm concerned you'll be waiting in the holding room for an additional half hour to 45 minutes. Emma hated the idea of cooling her heels in some Capitol anteroom simply because the current resident of the White House rebuffed her. She smiled as the perfect solution presented itself. "I know precisely what I want to do with that extra time. If the logistics don't present too much of a nightmare, I'd like to make a stop along the route." "A stop?" "Yes. I think it would send the perfect message if I paused on the way to taking the oath of office to visit the original copies of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence." After a moment of silence, the chairman replied, "That's brilliant. The National Archives is directly on the route. I'm sure the Secret Service can secure the rotunda without too much trouble. We can allow the press to photograph you." "Hold it right there. I'll allow the photo op, but only from a distance looking into the rotunda. I don't want them in the rotunda itself, and I think I'd prefer if this was an unannounced stop. But—" Emma felt her heart settle. "No, this is more than just a photo op for me. The Constitution stands for something. Those documents stand for something, and so do I. I don't want the moment sullied by treating it cynically." "Understood, Madam President-elect. We will make that happen. Please convey my apologies for the last-minute scramble to the committee and the security forces. This isn't your fault. Maybe not, but it's going to inconvenience people." Emma considered. "If possible, I'd prefer it if the archives themselves remained open during my visit and only the rotunda was unavailable to the public. I don't want to deprive visitors of the opportunity to spend time at one of the most important treasures in our capital." "I'm not sure the Secret Service is going to like that, but we'll do our best." "I know you will." Emma snapped her focus back to the present as the Reverend said, "I know you all join me in wishing our President-elect Godspeed as she undertakes her new role. May God watch over her and watch over all of us. Amen." "Amen," Emma murmured.